in case of doubt for Coote.
Can you see the presentation view of my presentation?
Yes.
Okay, wonderful. So I'm Joanne Humphries. I'm a portfolio manager in the ICT theme at the Engineering and Physical Sciences Research Council. Just firstly, thank you very much for inviting me today. It's been really interesting to hear the talks and discussions so far. My language skills are unfortunately quite lacking, so it's been really good to hear other people's experiences. I'm going to talk a little bit about EPSRC and where the research overlaps with language research. So I will just give a very quick overview of UKRI and EPSRC itself, how language research can fit into the engineering and physical sciences portfolio, specifically within the ICT theme where I work, and I'll give a brief overview of some of the funding opportunities that we have. So introduction to UKRI EPSRC. So United Kingdom Research and Innovation was launched in 2018 and is a non-departmental public body sponsored by the Department of Business, Energy and Industrial Strategy. And under the UKRI umbrella, we have Research England, Innovate UK, and then the 7 disciplinary research councils, which cover a really wide range of areas from natural environment, medical research, science and technologies, economic and social research, arts and humanities research, and then the engineering and physical sciences, which I'm going to give a little bit more detail on. So our vision is to deliver world-leading engineering and physical sciences research. EPSRC is the main funding body for this research in the UK. We want to work within the research ecosystem of UKRI, so with all of the organisations and councils that I mentioned on the previous slide, also working with R&D base in business, government departments and charitable organisations, as well as international partnerships. And the kind of main outcome or goal for this is to build on our strong working partnerships and deliver the government's target of 2.4% GDP invested in research and development by 2027. So EPSRC itself, the portfolio covers quite a range area of fields. So we have themes which cover more capability or subject specific areas. So engineering, chemistry, physics, information communication technologies. And we also have what we call challenge themes, which look at challenges within the economy and try to answer these questions. And those include healthcare technology areas, digital economy, and things such as cybersecurity and energy as well. So I am in the information and communication technologies theme. And again, we have a wide range of research areas here. So everything from AI to photonics, software engineering, communications, human-computer interaction. There's a really wide area. And I have picked out a couple of areas, mostly ones that I look after, that have the most kind of obvious overlaps with language and with language research. So I'll just go into a little bit more detail on those portfolio overlaps and how we can see language research within EPSRC's remit. So firstly, we have human-computer interaction. This is a study of how humans interact with computers and how to design computer systems that are effective for people to use. So this area can include development and study of interface technologies, as well as looking at social and ethical considerations. It may include human-robot interaction, and we also have some cognitive science research as well, where it's using this research to inform the design and the development of ICT systems. So where language could come in here, if there's any kind of language research that could impact the interaction elements of humans with a computer system, or any kind of language research that would inform the design of an interface, that could be included here. The next one that we have is human communication in ICT. So this is the study of how humans interact with one another via spoken and written language, but also gesture, posture and touch. So this research area explores how an understanding of these interactions can inform and improve the design of ICT. And this includes things that are used to enhance social interactions. So again, I think similar to human-computer interaction, you can see how language might fit in here. The study and understanding of language, either spoken or written, and how that could be used to inform ICT systems. We then have speech technology, which is the recognition, understanding and synthesis of human speech. So this is using a range of techniques and focusing on how systems recognise and generate the sounds of language. So this is more around the sound of language rather than the details of the language itself. But there could be some overlaps with language research around things like virtual assistants and chatbots, and how to overlap the sounds of language or pick up dialects and things like that. And then the next one is natural language processing. So this is the exploration of computational techniques to learn, understand and produce human language content. So technologies that can assist both human communication, so things like machine translation, and it also covers human-machine communication with conversational assistants, chatbots, virtual assistants, and things like that. So you can see that language research here could be used to inform so our understanding of human language content can then be used to inform computational language content. I'll talk a little bit about the funding opportunities that are available through EPSRC. So we have various range of funding opportunities. There's a lot more information on the UKRI EPSRC website, so I would encourage you to have a look at that. And we have funding opportunities for a variety of different research, variety of different topics, whether it's research focused, developing future leaders or developing collaborations, and also whether you're a new academic or if you've previously applied to EPSRC for funding before. So I'm going to touch briefly on the research focused grants. So I'll say a little bit about our discipline hopping grant, our standard grant, and then the new investigator awards. So discipline hopping first, what is it? So this scheme is about encouraging researchers with ICT expertise to use their research skills in a new discipline. It is also around encouraging researchers with other expertise to learn ICT research skills and apply them in their home discipline. So it really works both ways, whether you have the ICT expertise and you'd like to use it somewhere else, or whether you have other expertise, for example, it could be linguistics expertise or some other language expertise that you would like to apply to ICT. And the research areas that are applicable as your home discipline, for want of a better word, is basically anything that fits in within UKRI's portfolio. So the kind of constraints around this discipline hopping award, you need to have a track record of research in your home discipline and need to be interested in developing skills and collaborations with other disciplines. And you also need to be able to show how you will use interdisciplinary research and collaborative development to benefit the ICT community. Next, we have our standard grants. So this is a always open funding route. It's flexible and supports a wide range of programs. There's no fixed length or value, and there's no constraints on the research type. Various different things can be funded by this route. So the research projects themselves, which could be long-term or short-term. You can have long-term proposals aimed at developing a critical mass in an area. You can have feasibility studies, overseas travel grants, and also workshops. Interdisciplinary research can also be funded by standard grants, and remit of the research can be shared between the various different research councils. And then the New Investigator Awards. So this scheme is intended to support the establishment of an individual's research independence and supporting development of their career. So we would look for individuals who are holding an academic lectureship position but have not led a research group. It's also expected that these grants provide a personalised resource to support the academic's career progression and development. And in order to ensure this grant does have some additional assessment criteria where the reviewers look at research independence and also the support offered by your host organisation. This is my final slide, so just a couple of points and key contacts and links. So I am the portfolio manager for the couple of areas: human-computer interaction, human communication and ICT, natural language processing and speech technologies that I mentioned. So if you have any questions about any of those areas, if you think maybe that your research could potentially fall into one of those areas and you're interested about learning more, or just are interested in the remit, my email address is there, so do please feel free to get in touch. The discipline hopping awards that I mentioned, they are on our website on the UKRI funding finder, and there's a lot more information that you may be interested in there. And also, EPSRC has a remit query service. So if you are thinking of putting in a research grant, but you're not completely sure what remit it's in, whether that be the council itself or the themes which the research would fit in, there is a facility online where you can put in some details. It comes into us and we can check it for remit. And each of the councils have a very similar service. And that's everything from me. Are there any questions?
Yes, thank you very much, Joanne, for this overview. Any questions from the audience online or here in Lancaster? Okay, well, if not, I'll start with the question myself. I have the impression that most of EPSRC's support of language-related activities is connected with, information technology or ICT, whereas the new investigator grant, that is, of course, much wider, but it is not necessarily linked to a use of language in an information technology setting. And so, could you explain? I know because you're an engineering research council, I know this is a very general question, but how much of the weighting would have to be with languages and how much with engineering, or what engineering or science aspects would you expect to see in a new investigative proposal?
Yep.
So, I apologize for the general nature of the question.
No, that's fine. I think the answer also applies to the standard mode. So whereas the discipline hopping and ICT is very specific for the new investigator awards and the standard mode, they are a bit more focused. So for the remit to be within engineering and physical sciences, that does need to be the focus. We do have a capability to have interdisciplinary proposals. So what we would need for it to be an EPSRC-led proposal is more than 50% of the research to fall within our council. So whenever you submit a new investigator proposal, for example, if we think it might be split, using AHRC as an example, because they're here, if we think there might be arts and humanities interest, we'll send it over to them to have a look. They will give us a percentage interest, say, I don't know, 30–40%. As long as EPSRC's interest is in the majority, we would be happy to process that proposal.
All right, okay. Right, well, thank you. Are there any more questions? Okay, well, thank you very much, Joanne. So we can hand over now to James Fenner. He's from another research council, the Arts and Humanities Research Council, and he'll be talking about their research funding possibilities.
Thank you, Tim, and thank you very much for having me. I'll try and see if I can share my slides. Can you see those?
Yeah.
Excellent. Yes, thank you very much for having me. So I'm James Fenner. I'm a senior investment manager in the languages, in the histories, heritage, languages and literature team within HRC, and I'm responsible for languages, linguistics and literature portfolios. As a team, we look after 12 portfolio areas, what you probably consider traditional arts and humanities subjects such as history, philosophy, classics, law, religious studies, archaeology. And I suppose we kind of hold a unique position as a team in that we have the broadest remit disciplines within HRC in our team's responsibilities, within a council with the most extensive remit and disciplines representation within UKRI as a whole, but also the smallest budget. So of course there's some challenges there. For the purposes of this presentation, I'm going to talk about linguistics when I also talk about languages. I'm conscious that, of course, they're really two distinct disciplines in their own right, but more often than not, in terms of our investments and our funded projects, it's not always one or the other. There's always a blend of the two disciplines. This is just an overview of what I wanted to cover. HRC vision, in a similar way to Joanne did, my colleague in EPSRC, how we fund languages and science within HRC, with a couple of examples to follow as well, and also sort of plea at the end to hear from you really in the academic communities. So here's a sort of quote from our executive chair, Christopher Smith, and I guess it sort of gives a sense of sort of the context really for arts and humanities and how valuable they can be to not just to the economy, but also in terms of just wider society, as he says there, society's laboratory of imagination, and that essentially our understanding of the past, the analysis of the present, can also help reimagine the future. So I guess that's the sort of context and setting for us sort of funding of languages and the linkages and blurring with the science. So how we fund languages and science. What I first should say is that it sort of comes under three areas really, in a similar way to Joanne covered for EPSRC as well. So we have what's called discovery and curiosity-led research of funding opportunities in a similar way to EPSRC, such as standard grants, network grants, fellowships. We also have follow-on funding that's all to do with public engagements as an additional funding after a research grant has ended. And these funding opportunities are all year round. There's no sort of closing dates, and you can submit an application all year round. So that's sort of discovery-led, curiosity-led research. And again, there's links in terms of cross-council working as well, as Joanne mentioned. There's also sort of challenge-led funding, and this is more targeted funding calls with fixed timeline and closing dates, and that can be either internal decision making that's steering that funding opportunity, or from UKRI centrally as well as a funding body, but also from the academic community in terms of a steer of what you'd like to see come up in terms of funding themes and challenges. And there's also commissioned research, and by that I mean us approaching academics to do a secondment for us on a short-term basis to do some research for some certain research questions or some certain challenges we'd like addressing. So they're the sort of the three areas of funding that we cover. I should also say at this point that as you probably expect, EPSRC, so the Economic and Social Research Council, is the council we have most overlap with in terms of languages and linguistics, given the close connection between languages have with sort of social science disciplines such as psychology, sociolinguistics and sociology. And I guess if you'd sort of asked what the distinction is between us and EPSRC in terms of languages and linguistics, I guess it would be that HRC looks more at the cultural, sort of intangible and tangible aspects and impacts of languages and around identity and sort of social cohesion, whereas EPSRC I think would look more at the human behaviour, sociological, psychological aspects to languages as well. So So just to mention some strategic investments where languages and languages in science kind of touch within HRC's remit. We have a program that's sort of just finished actually, called Science in Culture, and that was aimed at encouraging mutual exchange between researchers working across sciences, STEM subjects, and the arts and humanities. And on the next slide, I've got next couple of slides, I've got an example of one of those that where the languages and the science are funded under that theme. But I think our most prestigious investments when it comes to languages was our Open World Research Initiative, or OWRI for short, which finished last year. And as you can see, there's four big large investments that we funded there. Each of these was £4 million, so 16 million total, which is a massive commitment, given the size of our budget as a research council. Of course, ours is quite small in comparison to our sister councils. And they explored a range of aspects when it came to languages, touching on the sciences as well, and sort of making a little nod to different to the sciences in different ways, and the way they're different areas of the country, different engagement with community partners, and the different approaches, methodologically speaking, as well. And I also mentioned commissioned research, and essentially we've just launched a call which just closed actually, for Horizon Scanning Fellowships. So this is us appointing fellows to do some research for us on the future of languages, and I'm sure the sort of sciences would touch on that as well. With a link to my mentioning of OWRI, we also had what we call a Powerful Priority Area Leadership Fellow to look after modern languages, and that was post was filled by until very recently by Janice Carruthers, who's a French professor at Queen's University Belfast. And I suppose she was I think she was the advocate for the languages, really, representing HRC when it came to languages, but also OWRI in terms of her languages expertise, and knowing the wider languages academic community within the UK and to an extent internationally as well, but also more importantly those links with policymakers as well. And essentially, I suppose collaboration was central to OWRI, not only across disciplines, other humanities disciplines, but also social, biological and health sciences, with a vast range of non-academic partners in different sectors, including charities, grassroots organisations, schools, policymakers and others. And each of the four projects, I showed you on the previous slide, works both independently and collaboratively with each other. I suppose one last point I wanted to mention as well is also the last point there towards national languages strategy for the UK. This is where the AHRC has collaborated with the British Academy, the Association of School and College Leaders, British Council and Universities UK develop proposals for the education and skills component of a much UK-wider national languages strategy. And as you can imagine, it's been shown in the media on a regular basis, the decline in language learning in this country at primary, secondary and higher education level. So this sort of strategy is policy-driven and supported by us as well as UK academies to try and sort of change that, and Professor Carruthers is heavily involved in that as well. And I suppose as a further point, we don't just have policy links through that strategy. We also have strong links, working relationships with the Department for Culture, Media, Sport on a regular basis, as well as other government departments. And as Joanne mentioned, also of course strong links with Department for Business, Energy and Industrial Strategy, which is our sponsored government department and where our funding comes from. So just to give you some examples of individuals and projects, the top one there, this is a current standard grant, and the goal of the proposed project is to shed new light on how the basic dynamics of speech production and perception are shaped by language-specific linguistic structures and may at the same time vary between individuals of the same language community in a systematic fashion. So there's some community engagement there, which is sort of the EHRC part, I guess, but there's also some computational aspects of languages as well in there, which we've already previously mentioned. And the same goes for the next example there, causal approaches to investigating language evolution. That is heavily data-driven, using using tools to analyze the language evolution, I guess, and in the social sciences more generally. And then the bottom one there makes a link back to the Science and Culture theme program I previously mentioned, where it brings together researchers from the humanities and the sciences in a co-disciplinary effort to make progress on fundamental questions such as what is thought, what distinguishes the human animal minds, and what is in communication. So again, really interesting project there. So to finish, how can you contribute? Essentially, it's only you that can tell us. Obviously, we do a lot of internal work around languages and science, but of course that's half the picture. We want to hear from you as the academic community, really, and it's only through you that we'll have a better idea of where our funding can go in terms of supporting languages and interdisciplinary research with sciences as well. And I suppose just also as a final point, just to echo Joanne's comments there about remit queries, we also have a remit query function on our Part of UK Right website. So if you are thinking of applying to any of our funding opportunities, please do fill that in. If you're unsure again of where your research fits within our AHRC's remit, or whether it touches on other councils like EPSRC's as well. There's my contact details there, and yeah, please get in touch. Please give your feedback. Really welcome to hear from you, especially if you have any research that's ongoing and you have any impact case studies that are coming out of that. We'd be very interested to hear. That's enough from me. Over to you, really. Any questions at all?
Again, thank you very much, James, for this overview. Are there any questions? Okay. Did you have a question? No. Okay. Well, I mean, one thing that I have I'm not sure if it's a question or a comment.
By all means.
I have the impression that you were saying, if I remember correctly, that you HRC are more interested in sort of the cultural aspect of languages, whereas aspects such as psychology or the behavior of humans when they use language would be more of interest to EPSRC. Now, I can imagine that there are language-related topics that we've covered today, which might be of interest to both funding bodies. We talked about differences in research cultures, for instance, in different countries, and how that can have an impact perhaps on well-being, on output, and so on. Or we can also think about how can we measure the effect of languages. My question in that sense is, where exactly would AHRC stop and where would EPSRC start? I mean, coming back to the very first talk today, Richard Simcott was talking about a fork in the road that between languages and science that ideally would not exist. So my question to you, and I guess also to Joanne, is where does your fork start, or is the fork there?
That's a really good point, really interesting, and I think there are some definitely challenges there in terms of remit, and I think that is down to the way that universities are structured in terms of disciplines, but also reflective of the way we're organised and structured within UKRI as well. Having said that, though, they are artificial constructs essentially, and we're very keen to sort of break down their discipline barriers essentially, and to fund more interdisciplinary research. Our executive chair of UKRI as a whole, Ottiline Liza, she's very keen of talking about UKRI within the wider sort of research and innovation landscape as a whole, rather than talking about individual councils and individual remits, which is it's a commendable point. I suppose what I should say is that it's on a case-by-case basis when it comes to remit, and it always has been. And so I suppose in general terms, it's quite difficult to answer your question, to be honest, Tim. But having said that, it's not necessarily just a case of whether a research fits between two research councils' remits. It could quite easily be 3 or 4 if the research breadth is that wide-ranging. But as Joanne has already previously mentioned, there would have to be an internal discussion and with the applicant in question as to how much of the research within that particular proposal sits within each council, and eventually a council would have to take the lead in terms of funding it eventually. But there would be, in terms of assessment, peer review stage and a panel, there would be scope for expertise in there to cover all aspects of a research proposal if it's that interdisciplinary. Don't know that sort of waffly answer kind of.
Yeah. Well, I know it's a very general question, but I'm very reassured by your statement that any project involving languages and science is by nature interdisciplinary as a result of the university structures that we have, as you so rightly point out. So I'm glad that can be taken into consideration when a bid is made. Okay, thank you very much, James. And we'll move on to our next speaker, Jenny Suno-U, who is a PhD researcher and also a polyglot, or hyperpolyglot even. And she's going to give a talk to us today entitled Languages and the Freedom to Create Opportunities.
Hi,
Jenny, do you want to record?
I don't mind, up to you.
Okay,
Okay, let's see.
So we're still recording.
Okay, share screen. When was the last tea break you had?
Well, this is a long session, so
okay, yes. If you guys wanted to stand up, like you don't have to stay seated, like feel free to stand up and move around a bit.
Okay, yes.
I think just because I spent the whole afternoon seated, in meetings and stuff, and I feel like, oh, if I could just listen to someone talking and stand and walk around the room, maybe that's quite pleasant. So yeah, hi everyone, my name is Jenny, and I'm going to share my personal experience of using languages in different fields, opportunities that I had to learn languages, and the opportunities that languages gave me. So this is like a summary of where I am with my languages. I was born in China, but I spent many years in Italy. I did my 2 masters in the UK, and I'm currently a PhD student at the University of Surrey. And my project is a collaboration with the Spanish government. I am evaluating a sustainable tourism policy, and that's why I'm learning Catalan. I traveled a lot, and I guess as a kid mostly in Europe. So I taught myself some French, German, and in the last few years or so, last few months as well, some Russian, Japanese. I did Latin back in school, and has Indonesia traveling. So I have a long list of languages I'd like to learn, but it's a step-by-step journey, and I love being part of a polyglot group and discuss very nerdy things. So if you want to know more about that, we can talk later. So as I went to school in Italy, I actually decided to go back to China for my undergrad. So I studied there, and it was really fun. It was, a big cultural shock because I look Chinese, but all my background and my values, my gestures are all from Italy. So that was a little bit disorienting in the beginning, but it was such a great experience, and it gave me so much in terms of like friendships and people that I really care for, even, today, about 10, 12 years later, we meet around the world, and it's just something special. And then I decided to try and get a master's degree. So I came to the UK, and with some of these guys, we published an article in 2015. We had the opportunity to go to Vienna and present our research, which was about digital marketing and communication in tourism. And I got to meet the Queen. Like, she came to see the new vet school at Surrey, and it was just very unexpected. And I thought it was like, just really cool. I mean, yeah. Last year I published a paper, and that helped me to improve my, academic English. So of course I studied English in school, but I guess like in many countries, we don't really speak English after 5-7 years. So having the opportunity to work with, professors and to contribute to research made like a big difference to my language skills. I graduated again, and now I'm working with the government in Spain, as I mentioned. And we had this big event in Montserrat, which is just outside the city of Barcelona. And I was immersed for 2 days with all these stakeholders. We were doing some fun events, workshops, like making perfumes with herbs and essential oils. We had some creativity and meditation sessions. And that was such a special occasion for me to really get to know my stakeholders, because now I'm interviewing them. I'm working with the whole province of Barcelona, with 11 regions and 600 companies. So for me to gain their trust and, to make that effort to speak their language, understand what they're going through, also with all the political situation, the independence, well, how can I say that? Some people feel really strongly about it, but others just want to be heard, and they will not go and march or tell you everything about their political beliefs. So just giving them the space to express themselves in the language they want, and showing them that you come as an outsider and you want to be part of the community, I think is really, really helping my research. And there we also had a private visit to the Abbey. And in case you don't know the place, this is what it looks like. It's this beautiful monastery in the middle of the mountains. And it was good timing, I think. I feel very lucky and grateful that I had a chance to share this with them. Also, after like 1.5 years, they hadn't met each other because of COVID. So that's my academic journey so far. Languages allowed me to do a lot of fun jobs. I'm a tour manager, so I take people around Europe mostly, but also China, the Caribbean, and it's really fun. I get people, I get seniors, I get rugby selections from South Africa. It's always just very entertaining, but also enlightening, because I get to meet people from such different corners of the world, and I get to share cultures and insights. And after, at the end of the day, it's a human connection, and that's the best thing that languages brought into my life. I also got to do ski trips, mostly in the Alps. And, I get really lovely posts from my clients or my colleagues. And languages also allow me to work in events. We organized this big incentive trip in Mauritius. We had the whole of the Shangri-La Hotel, more than 400 guests, and we were a team of 8 event managers. And we are all polyglots. We were all handling different regions for this big pharmaceutical company. But again, just something a little bit out of the blue. This is nothing to do with my daily life, but the opportunity came up and I said, yeah, of course I'm coming to Mauritius, why not? I'm also a language teacher. I've been teaching English, Italian, and Chinese for about 10 years now. These are two of my oldest students. The girl on the right has been with me for 8 years now. She's taller than me, she's very pretty. The other one is now in Australia for high school. And again, some of these relationships I developed and friendships, I go to visit my students abroad, go to the US or to Africa, and it has just brought so much richness to my life and to my job. This is from 2016. Tom was my first employer. When I was doing my master's at SARI, I met these guys and from the Space Center, and they were going to China for a potential investment partnership. So I decided, well, I can help, so why not? So I just went with them, and the first trip was just, getting to know each other, helping them to understand the Chinese counterpart, for the Asian guys to understand these guys from the UK, and my job was to help each other understand their cultures, their ways of thinking, of communicating. Some cultures are much more direct, and others are not that direct, so you have to learn to read in between the lines. And for them to have a person in between to really understand that what is not said adds a lot of value. And lastly, well, I guess one of my most recent things, the past 5 years or so, I've been teaching yoga. I've been hosting retreats in Italy, in Spain. We had one in Canada that we had to cancel because of COVID. But again, just, I'm trying always to bring my passions together with my skills and what people could pay me for. So something like this would fit. Of course, I've been traveling a lot, starting with hitchhiking trips to deserted islands, Malaysia, just meeting random people. I've done a lot of hitchhiking. This was my first hitchhiking trip. Here I'm trying to bargain in Thai, in Chiang Mai, and yeah, there was just fun times from probably 9 years ago. I've done all sorts of couch surfing. Maybe some of you know about that concept where you host and stay with others at their own place, and it's all for free. So there's just a simple exchange of stories, of meals, of music, languages, whatever you want. And I've been volunteering in some events. Like well-being events in the Netherlands, and festivals. This was Roskilde in 2015, and on the day of my birthday, I was there with 150,000 people. I was there for a week, and we were always speaking different languages, meeting new friends, joining activities of all sorts. So lots of really happy memories. And friends and relatives. This is my friend Simon from Sweden, and his grandma from Chile. And she doesn't speak any Swedish. So the day that I went to see him, we went traveling together, and he was speaking English to me, and I was translating to Spanish to his grandma. And there was just like a little special bond. And as part of the volunteering activities I have done or that I'm doing, there's TED. Many of us, I guess, know about the TED conference, but also TED Talks. I've done subtitles and translations for them. I've been doing woofing, organic farming in Thailand, in Indonesia, in Norway. And I'm currently working I volunteer as a mentor for We Do. It's an NGO based in Thailand these days, but I work with Asia, and they want to empower women and give opportunities and ideas for bright young girls who don't necessarily want to get married at 14, and And right now I'm working with a girl who's 19, and we're looking at scholarships and opportunities for her to go abroad and study what she's passionate about, which is body positivity and changing stereotypes around the idea of a beautiful woman. Like, what does that mean? I mean, it's there are many interpretations, and it's important to spread these messages out in the wider community. So these are some other polyglots, close friends of mine, that I wanted to just showcase, as an example of what languages can bring to your life. My friend Momoko is Japanese, and because we did our master's together in 2015 in tourism at Sari, and she went to work in Greece. So she spent 3 years in Greece working for the Japanese embassy, and she learned Greek language. She had a great time there, and then she moved on to Dubai to work again for tourism promotion for Japan. And there she met her current husband, who's from Slovenia. So she learned Arabic because of work and because she was interested. And now she's learning Slovenian because of his family. And he also had lived in Japan before. So, they're going to have a baby in a few months, and they would love to move back to Japan. And they both had, very successful careers, and languages, have become part of their lives, and helping each other to get closer to the other's family. This is Bartosz from Poland. We met 10 years ago. He's one of my best friends. He speaks 7 languages. So every day of the week, we try to, when we were both living in China, we tried to speak 1 language per day and try to stick to it, which is sometimes hard, but it's also very fun and very rewarding. And we are such close friends that we decided to have a company together. So we set up this ski agency to bring Asians to ski in the Alps, and everything was going really well until COVID. So yeah, and this picture is from when he came to see me in London 2 years ago, and we tried to catch up around the world. Last time we met was in Tenerife, in the Canary Islands, and I'm hoping that this winter he will come to ski in Italy, where I am now. This is Olaf. He's my tallest friend in the world. He's 2 meters 10. He's Swedish, and he also traveled around a lot. He moved to Spain, where he met his girlfriend, and then he moved to China, and he loved it. And he's currently doing a theater in Chinese. He moved to Taiwan, and he's doing improv. He quit his job in Europe, decided he loved Asia, and is currently working with his own company in Hong Kong. And this is Anna from Hamburg. We met again traveling maybe 10 years ago, always kept in touch, and she's also a language lover, an avid traveler. She's an art teacher and a painter, and she learned Chinese. She lived in Italy for a year as a volunteer. And these people are just, a small example of the kind of mindset that polyglots tend to have. And I hope that, if you get the chance to maybe take something away from today, that will be something that will stay with you, for the rest of your life. So here are some questions for you. You are welcome to unmute yourself or ask questions, but I'm equally happy to just give you a few minutes to do some reflections for yourself. So, what is one thing that you are taking away from today, from this conference? Maybe, think about a language that could give you opportunities. Maybe think about things that you love or a good excuse to learn a language. It could be, movies, a series. It could be, video games. It could be your next trip. It could be a friend or a lover, and a community or someone that you can share the journey with.
Okay. So thank you very much, Jenny. So any questions for Jenny, or would anyone like to answer her questions? Okay, well, I'll start with a comment in that case. You're quite right. One of the nicest things about learning languages are the people that one meets. And I'll try to answer one of your questions, which language will open doors. My answer is all of them, but there's a choice between learning the pointless languages. I think is more fun because they open doors that are not so visible. Okay, so I think if I had a choice between a useful language in inverted commas and a pointless one, I would take the pointless one. Yeah. Because you don't see so many people talking with such passion about the useful languages that people want to learn, but we saw a very good talk about a pointless one. So I think look for those pointless doors. Yeah. Anyone else have any questions or?
I mean, it depends where you're from. You know, if you are from a good country, then you have the luxury. If you're from a poorer country, then you want to learn the, you know, if you come from a country with less luxury, then you want to learn a language that is economically and financially helpful for you. You know,
I suppose so. I mean, I suppose. It depends, of course, on the priorities and the situation of the individual. It actually, coming back to science, I remember a comment made by somebody, l'inglese dobbiamo imparare per necessità, però imparare l'italiano, per esempio, per piacere, which you can learn. A lot of people in science, learn English from necessity, not necessarily because they have any particular interest in Anglophone culture. And to be fair to them, why should they? And I'm not saying that Anglophone culture is better or worse than any other. I'm just saying that because the fact that somebody has learned English for necessity in science does not necessarily signify a genuine interest, in that culture. This is why I think it's more difficult actually to bond with people using English with native speakers of English. It is possible still, but you have to make more effort, to show them that you're really, interested, in their culture. If you can do that, they're as receptive and as open as anyone else. But it's not as easy as if, maybe, if you speak Norwegian to somebody, then it's much easier than, yes.
Where are you from in Italy?
In the north, like near Lago Maggiore.
Okay, nice.
Great. So anyway, thank you very much, Jenny. And last but not least, we have Rebecca Raber,